Mosul, 2016. Minutes before sunrise. An alley grid of concrete and rebar breathes dust and smoke as the harsh chatter of a PKM stitches the pavement. An element from a DevGru assault troop sits pinned in a fatal funnel with angles stacked against them. ISR is delayed by a low cloud ceiling and heavy urban clutter. And a QRF is still minutes away, which is too long for a bleeding operator. Inside a second-story room, a cracked window frames the street. Steady hands set a Leupold Mark IV optic on an M24, a 2-bolt action rifle with a suppressor. Next to a worn dope book and a battered spotting scope resting on a sandbag, fingers settle the bipod and cheek weld while eyes read smoke, wind, and corners. The alley stays loud as a quiet overwatch takes shape. Her name is Alex Vega Carter. Staff Sergeant retired. Former United States Army sniper with the B4 identifier. Now a low-profile security advisor. She keys a radio and offers calm guidance that centers positive identification and clean lanes. Move on, my shots. Keep it tight. Hold until confirmed. The cadence is simple and steady, and the room feels a touch larger as control replaces panic. She is not on the roster today, but she is here. Northern Mosul in 2016 sits in the last minutes before sunrise. A tight grid of alleys presses in with concrete, exposed rebar, and parapets that turn each corner into a fatal funnel. Dust hangs with smoke, then jumps as a PKM hammers short bursts across an intersection. A DevGru assault troop element tries to exfil, while a rooftop gun owns the crossing, and an RPG-7 team waits for a clean angle. ISR support is late under a low cloud ceiling and heavy urban clutter that blinds small drones and narrows look angles. A QRF is rolling from a few blocks out. But minutes matter when one man is bleeding in the street. Radio traffic snaps and fades inside concrete canyons as multipath and dead zones break calls mid-sentence. Positive identification suffers behind laundry, water tanks, and satellite dishes that slice sightlines and force risky peaks as the PKM resets again. One operator is down with a thigh wound and gets a tourniquet high and tight with a pressure dressing stacked over it. A teammate drags him behind a low curb while another scans for angles and covers the lane. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole keeps commands short and dry as the on-scene leader, moving men only when cover is honest. In the same block, Alex Vega Carter hears the fight. Staff Sergeant retired and a former United States Army sniper with the B4 identifier. Now a low-profile security advisor. Her drag bag holds an M24A, 2 and 7.62 by 51 with a Leupold Mark IV optic and a Harris bipod. A spotting scope wrapped in cloth rides with a PVS-14, a PRC 152A without a compatible fill, a blank range card, and a worn dope book. She is close enough to see dust kick off the pavement and to hear the burst rhythm. She no longer trusts the chain of command after a mission failed. Yet the machine gun and the pulse of an IR strobe pull her to duty. And this element needs a lane in seconds, not minutes. Alex Vega Carter carries the quiet of a career that never asked for applause. She is a former staff sergeant, retired, and a former United States Army sniper with the B4 identifier who once supported Ranger Regiment taskings. Colleagues called her Vega because her wind calls felt like reading a night sky. Stars turning into mil values and holds. The habit never left, even when she stepped off the line. Her dope book looks like a field ledger that was handled through heat, grit, and long nights. Pages hold engagement ranges, wind speeds, barometric pressure, density altitude, and simple notes that turn memory into muscle memory. Thumbed corners open to a pattern of mistakes corrected and lessons kept. It is proof that competence is built in small, repeatable choices. In the drag bag sits an M24, a 2-chambered in 7.62 by 51. A Leupold Mark IV 3.5 to 10 optic with a mil-dot reticle rides the receiver, capped by a baffle-type suppressor, a Harris bipod, a sand sock, and a Leupold spotting scope wrapped in cloth share space, with a PVS-14. A PRC 152A without a compatible fill at this moment, a blank range card, and the worn dope book. The kit is ordinary and exact, which makes it trustworthy. The cracked view tells the rest. The rifle scope carries a small fracture near the edge that does not touch the reticle, and the 0 still holds true. A cracked window frames the same street, and through both pieces of glass, Alex sees clear truth, inside damage. A mission once went wrong. Trust in the chain of command faded, and she promised to never press a trigger again. Yet the hard chatter of a machine gun and the soft blink of an IR strobe pull her toward Overwatch with restraint. She does not chase heroics. She focuses on positive identification, clean angles, and the next safe breath for the men below. The night thins toward morning, and her cadence turns fear into order, one measured choice at a time. A DEVGRU element tries a short bound across an exposed intersection, while a PKM rakes the pavement and chips concrete into the air. One operator takes a round high in the thigh, and a teammate snaps on a tourniquet, stacks a pressure dressing, and checks a quick distal pulse. He drags the casualty behind a low curb, while another man watches angles and counts the rhythm of bursts. Radio traffic fractures in concrete canyons as multipath and dead zones swallow half words and delay confirmations and step on transmissions during critical medical calls. Alex Vega Carter receives a PRC 152A with a compatible fill from Liaison Sergeant Louise Parker and starts proper deconfliction. She identifies as a friendly lone Overwatch on the second floor north of the mosque minaret and confirms that the team carries IR strobes. She requests a low-signature IR chemlight tossed into a corner to aid a talk-on, and states she will not fire without positive identification. Brevity stays crisp and calm, with clear landmarks, clean acknowledgments, and no rank-heavy chatter on the net as the bridge channel stabilizes under pressure tonight. Through a mil-dot reticle, she ranges a brick window height as a known reference and estimates 260 to 320 meters. She opens a range card, sets elevation near 1.1 mil, and holds left about 0.2 to 0.3 for a light crosswind. She builds a hasty hide with a bipod on the sill and a sandsock under the stock, keeps her silhouette inside the room, and watches for a clean exposure. The element braces to move on her first break while the alley stays loud and tight, and the clock feels heavier with every short burst right now. She steps into the half-collapsed clinic and clears the near corner with a Glock 19 held high, then checks dead space with a slow, lean, and controlled breath. Holster. Safety check. Move to the cracked window that faces the intersection where dust lifts with each short burst. A Harris bipod settles on the sill. A sandsock rides the stock. Torn cloth breaks the outline against the room. She keeps her body inside the darkness to avoid a skyline while the street chatters and the pavement spits. Tire smoke drifts across the lane and a rag on a rooftop line flutters left to right in small, steady pulses. Light quartering left at 3 to 5 miles per hour points to a left hold around 0.2 to 0.3 mil at about 300 meters. The dope book opens to familiar pages, and she sets elevation near 1.1 mil based on warm air and higher density altitude. She keys the radio and requests a talk-on from Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole, with clear landmarks and an IR strobe confirmation. Then states she will not fire without positive identification. The plan is simple and exact for men who are already moving in their heads. On my first clean break, move 1 body length. She refuses a low-probability shot through fabric where no weapon is confirmed and lets the crosshairs settle on angles that matter. A mission once went wrong, and she swore to never press a trigger again. Yet the hard rattle of the machine gun and the soft blink of an IR strobe turn that vow into disciplined action. She accepts Overwatch for only as long as lives depend on it, and not a second longer. While the alley stays loud and the element braces to move on her first break. The cracked window holds a narrow slice of street and sky as Alex Vega Carter settles into position. The loopholed Mark 4mm dot optic sits steady on an M24, a two-chambered and 7.62 by 51. A Harris bipod grips the sill while a sandsock supports the stock. And her cheek weld finds the same spot it always finds. She keeps her silhouette buried inside the room where the light cannot cut her shape. Wind lifts dust from the intersection and slides it left to right in a patient drift. A rag on a rooftop line flickers in the same direction, and the pace says 3 to 5 miles per hour. She mills a brick window height for range and reads roughly 300 meters. Elevation goes to about 1.1 mil, with a left hold near 0.2 to 0.3 mil. Through the glass, she builds positive identification on a PKM team by silhouette and behavior. The long barrel sits forward with the bipod set shallow. The feed belt loops over the side. And the bursts come short, with quick pauses between. The gunner leans to re-index and lifts his line for a heartbeat. Her trigger press is smooth and straight, and the suppressed report feels like a firm door closing inside the room. Impact is clean, and the gunner folds off the PKM. The spotter leans to confirm, and she sends a follow-up before the angle returns. Then she stops and lets the scene breathe. No chase. No extra rounds on bodies that are no longer a threat. She resets the optic to search and holds the lane with presence instead of noise. Her voice on the net stays crisp and cool as she reports PKM down and eyes likely down. Then gives the DEVGRU element 5 seconds to move. 1. She tracks for squirters and denies looks with a ready hold rather than spray, keeping the alley safe for the bound. She never breaks the window line and never shows a skyline. And her breathing stays slow and even. Control lives in habits built over years, and each habit is doing its work now. She glances at the dope book, where a short line reminds her to take only the shots that matter. And the date on the page ties the past to this morning. Outside. The street noise drops for a beat as competence bends. Chaos. The element starts its first bound under her overwatch. The cracked glass stays steady, and the lane begins to open. Sergeant Louise Parker hands Alex Vega Carter a PRC 152A that already carries a compatible ComSec fill for the bridge channel used between the partner force and the blue element in this area of operations. She does not hijack an encrypted net with a scanner, and she does not guess at keys. She identifies herself by terrain reference. Second floor north of the mosque minaret, with a cracked window and cloth in the frame. She confirms friendlies are running IR strobes and requests a low-signature IR chemlight tossed to a corner to aid a clean talk on. Urban multipath and dead zones chew up radio calls in these alleys and make trackers and position beacons unreliable. Concrete walls reflect signals, and the canyons split sentences, so acknowledgments arrive late or doubled. A talk on with landmarks and IR becomes the right call when satellites struggle to help. She builds the picture with calm phrases and leaves no space for confusion. Her brevity sounds like a joint special operations task force net heard on a quiet day. Lane 1 open on my next break. Single file. 2 body spacing. Keep it quiet. She adds the promise that she will not fire without positive identification, and then refuses a low-probability shot at a shadow behind fabric because a weapon is not confirmed and the backdrop is unknown. The restraint steadies the lane more than another loud burst ever could. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole acknowledges with short confirmations that keep the chain of command intact without rank-heavy chatter. He moves only when the marks are confirmed and the language is clear. The bridge radio stays stable. The IR strobes mark blue shapes with a steady blink. And the talk on points men to real cover instead of guesswork. The shared clock begins to matter again as everyone works the same seconds. The section ends with a picture of safety confliction instead of noise. Stable bridge radio. Confirmed IR marks. Terrain-based talk, on. And a shared clock that binds the movement to her shots. The lane opens because voices stayed calm and procedures were correct. Confidence rises not from dramatic lines, but from people who know what they are doing and do it the same way every time. The first break settles the street like a held breath as Alex Vega Carter holds overwatch with discipline. Rooftop movement twitches at the edge of her glass and looks heavy at first glance. She studies shape, mount, and the absence of a feed tray. Then rules out a DSK. What remains is antenna and pipe clutter that tricks a rushed eye. A lookout appears, with small binoculars and a nervous lean over a parapet. She tracks the head and shoulders, notes posture, and sees no weapon. Positive identification stays negative. So the rifle rests. Control means letting harmless motion pass. A real threat builds 2 roofs over when an AK-armed fighter links with a second man who carries an RPG-7 tube. Alex calls for a low-signature IR mark to refine the lane and set a clean talk on. She reads pre-fire cues as the A-gunner removes the safety cap and the gunner settles the tube on his shoulder with the sight coming to the eye. The first round leaves her barrel before his sight picture is stable, and the A-gunner drops behind the parapet. Ground movement folds into the cadence of fire. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole calls a bound, and the element drags the wounded operator from the curb to thicker cover. Suppression comes from presence rather than volume, as enemy heads stay down under the weight of a watcher who does not miss. The street keeps its noise, but the path through it starts to form. Ammunition management stays quiet and methodical, with the internal magazine of the M24A2. After 3 controlled shots, she lifts the bolt, checks the stack, and adds a round to the magwell without losing the field. Cheek weld returns to the same point on the stock, and the reticle settles to center lines again. Nothing rushes, and nothing wastes motion. A snapshot flicks out of a rooftop hatch with an AK. Hard angle and unknown backdrop. She does not send a round through the risk of crossfire into spaces that may hold non-combatants. She waits for a clean exposure on open roof where backstop and angle are honest. One precise round denies the hatch without chasing a body into shadow. Comms stay short and correct for a joint special operations task force net. Lane 2, clean for 3 seconds. Go. The words land like hand signals, and the element moves because the clock and the picture are shared. Presence works as a quiet weapon, and the alley opens under it. The rhythm settles into search. Identify. Decide. Fire. And reset. With more holds than shots and more control than noise. The team completes another bound toward a breach point as Alex scans for squirters and watches for any new angle. Her silhouette stays inside the room. Her breathing stays even. And the cracked glass stays steady while the city exhales. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole keys the net and asks for the voice guiding his element. Keeping it brief and clean. The answer comes in a steady tone that fits the net like it belongs there. Someone who does not miss when it matters. Move on my shots. The words land without flair and ride the rhythm of acknowledgments that follow. Short confirmations that keep call signs and the picture tight. Across the element, the mood shifts from rattled to ready. The cracked glass of the window and the hairline mark on the scope feel less like flaws and more like a way to see truth inside damage. Alex Vega Carter holds the lane with discipline that favors positive identification over impulse and clean angles over noise. She once promised to never press a trigger again. Yet, duty speaks loud when seconds hold lives, and her answer is control. Radio culture stays correct and quiet. No rank-heavy chatter. Only call signs. Positions. And clear marks that put men exactly where they need to be. Cole acknowledges with simple copies and sets. Then moves only when the picture is confirmed. The line becomes more than a line as it turns into a promise that guides the bound. and it lands because skill and care are doing the work behind every word. Alex Vega Carter divides the rooftops and alleys into 3 lanes using fixed landmarks that will not shift under stress. Water tanks mark the left boundary. Laundry lines stitch the center. And parapet breaks define the right edge. Lane 3 opens on my next break, sits in her head as a clock and a plan. Single file. 2 body spacing. Keep it quiet becomes the cadence that steadies breath and feet. Target precedence stays simple and strict. Eyes and guns go first. And only when confirmed beyond doubt. A small figure peeks over a roof with empty hands and a thin shirt. And she calls negative non-combatant while keeping the rifle at rest. Presence does the work here. And enemy heads sink when they feel a watcher who does not waste bullets. Medical updates arrive in short beats that feel real and needed. The wounded operator holds a tourniquet high and tight with hemostatic gauze packed and secured. And his teammate uses a drag carry along thicker walls to reduce exposure. Security stays honest with angles covered and chatter kept to what moves people safely. Sergeant Lewis Parker pushes a clean update to the QRF so they hit the breach point on time with the right picture. One last burst snaps from an AK on a distant roof and tries to take the lane back. She suppresses the angle with a single precise round just off the parapet rather than chase a risky kill through unknown backdrops. Comms stay short and correct for a Joint Special Operations Task Force net as Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole moves the element across open ground under her overwatch. IR strobes blink like a steady pulse in dust as the element crosses and stacks at the breach. The handoff is clean and quiet the way it should be. Alex calls last man and Chief replies set. And the movement flows into cover that will hold. She opens the bolt. Checks clear. And steps back from the window as systems take over from improvisation. The street sound finally eases for a beat. And 3 lanes fold into daylight. The quick reaction force rolls to the breach point on time after Sergeant Louise Parker pushes the update. An armored pickup with a gun shield noses in as a partner force team, establishes exterior security and watches the corners. The DevGru element finishes the cross and stacks tight on the entry. Helmets close and rifles low. Hand and arm signals carry most of the traffic, while short radio confirmations keep the picture clean. Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole moves to a line of sight and gives a quiet acknowledgement that fits the moment. Alex Vega Carter answers with a simple line that lands like a steady hand on a shoulder. No crowding. No noise. Just a shared understanding that the work was done right. The element shifts weight and gets ready for the next step. Weapon handling stays correct and unhurried. Alex opens the bolt, verifies the chamber clear, and steps off the gun without breaking the room. She returns the PRC 152A to Sergeant Parker, confirms that she is off the net, and slips the dope book and the drag bag into place. Recognition is small and professional. A forearm grip or a nod that keeps identities protected and the chain of command intact. The link-up holds its shape as the team loads for exfil under the cover of the quick reaction force. IR strobes dim in dust and mark blue shapes without drawing eyes. The street sound eases for a beat as systems take over from improvisation and radios settle into routine cadence. Relief arrives the way it should in this work. Quiet, disciplined, and earned. What stays after the noise is a set of small, steady things. A worn dope book where numbers became judgment and judgment became care. A cracked glass that still frames a true picture when the center holds. A soft blink of an IR strobe that reads like a steady pulse when fear wants to run fast. The lessons are simple and earned. Positive identification over impulse when a shadow moves in dust. Short. Correct comms over noise when stress squeezes every word. Presence and discipline over volume of fire when lives depend on clean lanes and safe angles. This part is for the veterans who stepped away from the system but kept the craft in small habits. Clear the chamber even when no one is watching. Say negative when a shot is not clean, and keep the range card honest. Let competence be quiet, and let restraint be the point. We built this story with accurate military detail, because credibility is a kind of respect. The terms matter only as far as they protect people and keep the picture true. No gore here. Only the calm weight of duty, turning chaos into a path that others can cross. The relief that follows is the kind you earn and then put down gently. If this moved you, share the line that carried the team when seconds mattered. Someone who does not miss when it matters. Move on my shots. Tell us in the comments which moment felt most humane to you. The one that put dignity first. Subscribe for more stories about competence, discipline, and quiet kindness. And let this one close with a breath, as systems take over and the street sound fades for a beat.